Pretty late to the party on this, but that's kind of par for the course. Hello, all. This is the One Nerd, and today we're going to be discussing the future of one of my favorite horror franchises of all time, Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Oh, sure, there may be better single horror movies out there. Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are considered some of the best slashers of all time, and I consider them pretty amazing as well, nearly perfect in Halloween's case, even if many of their sequels fail to hit that same mark.
So you want to be on Dangertainment? Let's see what you got.
And who can deny the power and camp value of Nightmare on Elm Street? And let's face it, way too many others to even mention. But there's something about Friday the 13th that's always drawn me in. Maybe it's the fact that it was the first exposure to the horror slasher genres, having watched the movies a lot on cable at a young age. Or maybe I relate a little bit to Jason as a young kid. I mean, I was never what you would call deformed, but everyone can relate to feeling isolated sometimes. There was also a time where I was labeled as a disease by the kids in my elementary school, but this isn't a place to trauma dump. Whatever the case, it's always held a special place in my heart when it comes to horror, which is why it's been so frustrating that we haven't gotten any new Friday the 13th or Jason stories for years thanks to a certain lawsuit. For those not aware, Victor Miller claimed that he had copyright over the original Friday the 13th film, him being the original screenwriter, and therefore the elements of the franchise derived therefrom, like Pamela Voorhees, Camp Crystal Lake, and Jason, at least his name. And after years and years, it was finally resolved with Miller getting the copyright to the elements found in his script, but Sean Cunningham, the producer, getting the right to anything created afterward, like adult Jason and the hockey mask. That's obviously a very simplified version of it, but the point is that now it's resolved, which is why we're seeing a cascade of new Friday the 13th stuff coming out, funnily just in time for the start of the Halloween season. A new prequel series centering around Pamela Voorhees and set at Camp Crystal Lake for one, and a reboot to the film franchise as a whole that frankly has been rolling out kind of like a new addition to a superhero franchise, including revealing Jason's new look and mask in the same way they did Spider-Man's new suit recently. Even referring to the new initiative as the Jason Universe, which even having to say those words out loud brings me close to the point of vomiting. I mean, I'm excited about more Jason, but out-of-touch executives are a universal scourge we have to all deal with. While we wait for the planned movie and video games to come out, as teased at recent conventions, we have gotten a little more of Jason in the form of a participation in the upcoming Halloween Horror Nights, and a short film made as a tie-in for an alcohol brand named Angry Orchard. Now, I'm not a drinker myself, but I assume it's some sort of apple beer from the name alone. I don't really know what it means that the apples are angry, but regardless, they're sponsoring a short film called Sweet Revenge. It hasn't really gone over well with a lot of fans. An angle I can sort of understand is feeling a little icky about a horror icon like Jason being used to advertise beer, or advertising anything really. But in my opinion, that's a little hypocritical. I assume most people aren't old enough to remember the iconic Elvira beer ads.
I mean, here I am stocking up for Halloween. I got my steaks, got my ribs. Then when I ask the stock boy where the Coors Light is stacked, he points me to the Coors and Coors Light Halloween display, and I'm on it. Whoa, it's like deja vu. Whoa, it's like deja vu.
But they were everywhere back in the day, and other horror icons have not been against shilling for money. Freddy used to be so hard up for cash that he had an 800 number.
Just a phone call away. Dial this number and prepare to be scared. And I'm always around, everywhere. So dial this number now if you dare.
Do people remember what 800 numbers are? Am I too old to be doing this? Anyway, point is, Jason is hardly above goofier pursuits. I mean, I mained him for the longest time in Multiverses, and I plan on buying whatever skin he has coming out for Fortnite in a few months. But the crass commercialism is not the only issue with the short. I'm sure if you've checked out my channel before, you know I'm a fairly positive person, but the key word there is fair. The short is only 15 minutes and it's free to watch on the Jason Universe channel, which I will link in the description. But let's take a brief look and get a feel for what's in store for this new universe. It starts off very simply. A bunch of young people go to a cabin near a lake. One of them, who turns out to be our final girl, is revealed to have gotten engaged to another one of the group. We get a creepy interaction to who would be a typical slasher harbinger.
Apple. Fresh pick.
Sure.
But he turns out to be more of a weird old man who rented them the cabin. But he does give a little hint of what happened on the property.
Property's had a bit of a troubled past, but all we saw was opportunity.
What kind of trouble?
Well, you know, the usual story. Revenge. Betrayal. Murder. Lots of murder.
I will say just having the land out for rent like an Airbnb makes a lot more sense than trying to reopen a campsite where a bunch of brutal murders happen. Although it seems kind of irresponsible not to disclose that sort of thing beforehand. If I had to guess, I would say the continuity of this film takes place at least after the events similar to movies 1, 2, and possibly 3. I only say 3 because Jason already has his hockey mask, but as he proved in the last remake, those events can be drastically compressed. Anyway, we get a little flirting from the final girl and her fiance, some promise of skin, except there's only so much you can show on a free YouTube video.
Show's over.
And then things start to really kick into gear. Now, obviously, we have our first issue. Clearly, writer-director Mike P. Nelson had a very limited time frame to work with. I mean, this thing is shorter than even a lot of short films you'll see out there. So he needs to get things going. But the way he does it, to have our final girl get pulled underwater by Jason and then I guess struggle underwater until the sun fully goes down. I get he wanted a clever way to skip time, but this just makes no sense in any way, shape, or form. And frankly, could have been easily fixed by her maybe falling asleep on the boat or falling asleep on the pier waiting for her fiance to show up. But when she does finally get out of the lake, she starts to wander back to the cabin, seeing that Jason has been a busy boy while she was out. Which also makes me question where he would have found the time to do any of this. I mean, it was obviously Jason who pulled her under before, so he couldn't have been struggling with her that whole time because he had to go kill those people, including the creepy old man and admittedly clever reincorporation of his old Apple thing. So, could she just not swim? Is that what it was? It's really bad when one plot hole ruins the whole story. It's not like this is a full movie where you can have time to forget about a plot hole because everything else is going on, but by the time you're coming up with your own theories on what may have happened, the credits are already rolling on this. We then come to the other issue with the short, that being the instance of incorporating a theme. At the start, the creepy old man classified the murders, more likely done by Jason, as revenge. Well, the final girl finally makes it to the cabin only to discover that her fiancé, in full view of the world through a very large and clear window, making out with the female friend they came with. Again, this is all just a symptom of trying to fit a plot like this into a short. We see a minute later, after the fiancé has been killed and the homewrecker was almost done in by an apple slicer, which actually would have been a really sick kill if they'd actually committed to it. The final girl and the homewrecker are escaping when the final girl suddenly stabs the other girl, killing her and wrecking the car that they were using to escape. We then see the final girl get out to confront Jason, and the two start to approach each other before the credits roll, where I can only assume Jason guts her like a fish in half a second. Now, I can respect Mike P. Nelson for trying to do something different. You've been put in charge of one of the most well-known horror franchises of all time, and a franchise known for some twist final girls. Like that time a final girl was a telekinetic for some reason. But if you want to set up a twist final girl like this, one who snaps presumably from the pressure of almost being killed by Jason and seeing her fiancé cheating on her, there needs to be a longer setup than something you can provide in a 10-minute beer ad. Maybe Nelson is hoping this will be a proof of concept that will lead to something else, a longer movie, where you can remake this story into a bigger thing. I mean, it worked for the creator of Terrifier, remaking an old short of his in a highly profitable franchise, but it's a little too ambitious in this case. I wouldn't call this short bad. It has some interesting ideas, it's shot well, even if it comes off as very clearly a Super Bowl commercial. But I appreciate that it goes for it and actually shows the violence and gore and doesn't feel the need to pull away because it's essentially an ad. Speaking of, the product is never mentioned at all in this short in any kind of gross way. There's a theme of apples throughout, and you'll see a couple apples around, people eating apples, and of course that apple slicer kill we almost got. But the product is never really shown in your face like some other movie ad product placement I can think of.
According to the calculations on my Microsoft Surface, they have advanced cloaking technology. The Microsoft Surface confirms it. Microsoft Surface.
Overall, it's an average short. I think fans are way more harsh on this because it's the first official film we've gotten involving Jason in years, and it's tied to a beverage brand. Not to mention, people really don't like the new look of Jason. In my opinion, I don't mind the look of the mask. It looks a little cleaner than previous versions, but it's been through less damage than the previous iconic one from the original timeline. If I had one thing to critique, Jason is not nearly big enough. He's a little skinny. Needs to bulk up a little bit. Get him closer to his Multiverses version. But at the end of the day, this is a short film for a beer brand. A new film is still clearly in the earliest form, so a lot can change, and I hope a lot does change. I'm not looking for anything perfect, but this short clearly has a few too many holes that were a bit too big for me to ignore. But it is way too early to write off this initiative, and I think it's getting judged harsher than it really deserves. I am excited to see more of this. Okay, I'm not calling it a universe, but I am looking forward to seeing whatever they have planned. Be it good or bad, we'll probably still get some kind of entertainment out of it. But as always, I want to hear what you guys think. Did you watch the short? Do you have any thoughts? Are you a longtime Jason fan or just starting out? Let me know in the comments. This is The One Nerd, and until next time, I hope you have a good rest of your day.